So for this final class audio, I wanted to talk about empathic communication. And this is something that is a newer concept for me in terms of the way in which I'm understanding it. And so it's been something that's unfolding for me on a deeper level in the last 6 to 8 months, especially in the last month or so. Really, and I've said this before, I think really what an empath is a vibrational linguist. Someone who can speak the language of vibration, who understands vibration. And as I've also mentioned before, the thing about energy is it doesn't lie. Words can deceive us. We can say we're fine when we're not fine. We can be we can deceive ourselves and keep telling ourselves that something that really deep down isn't true. Words have a way of cloaking reality, and they're useful for where we're at in terms of consciousness and to understand things, but they are also limiting. And something that's interesting about vibration is that if you research or listen to any people that have out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences where they die and come back, how they will describe whenever they meet with other beings or see other beings or even see past relatives that have died, there is a communication that happens that's telepathic, or they just sort of know what that other person's feeling or thinking. And I think any of us can relate to this in terms of dreams. Most of the time, I think for most people, when we have dreams and we're communicating with people in our dreams, it's like that. It's not like we're speaking words, but we're actually just passing information energetically or visually. And it's usually a combination of feeling the other person and seeing kind of symbols that speak to us. And what I want to suggest to you is that you are a vibrational linguist, and that actually empaths, and this is just from my limited perspective, but as I've dug deeper into this and really explored and allowed myself to become more and more and more and more and more sensitive rather than less and less and less, or rather than trying to close it down. And I'm not going to say that's easy, as you all know. That's a difficult thing to do, and it's scary, and I'm not great at it. Sometimes I'm still learning in certain areas, in areas where I'm more vulnerable or I have more trigger points. It can be more difficult. But as I've allowed myself to become more sensitive rather than less, and allowed my more keen sensitivities to open up, what happens is you start to really become sensitive and feel the vibration of everything around you. And obviously, sometimes I'm more sensitive than others. It depends on how well I'm taking care of myself, how much I'm breathing deeply, how much I'm sort of removing myself from my individual perspective and pulling back and getting more of an objective perspective, like through meditation. But nonetheless, the more that I do these things, I have moments and times where I feel like I'm so aware that everything around me is pulsating a vibration, and that it's all just an extension of me, and it's all just an extension of source. I realize that my whole existence here is a vibrational communication with the world around me, with other vibrations. And when you understand that, and you have the ability to really be sensitive and feel vibration, you can become an expert linguist in that way. In other words, you can become an expert at harmonizing with the vibrations around you. And I think that is crucial to understand, because I believe that is part of what we're doing. As we know, as a human species, we're evolving. We continue to evolve. Our consciousness is continually expanding. And there are people who've gone before us that have paved the way for us to have the technology that we have, and the inventions that we have, and the luxuries that we have, and even the understanding that we have. The fact that we can go into quantum physics is a result of people like Albert Einstein and scientists who have gone before. People, by the way, who were usually considered crazy at their time. Not all, but many. So you have to be willing to think outside the box and reach outside the box, and even sometimes dare to see beyond what mainstream says is reality. And I think that as empaths, I believe that what we're doing is really building the foundation for our species to be able to communicate telepathically. energetically, completely. And I do believe there are other advanced civilizations that have evolved past using language. Not that language isn't useful, but once you get to a certain point of consciousness, it is just irrelevant. And again, like I said, the beautiful thing about being able to speak a vibrational language over using words is that it doesn't lie. And so imagine if everyone were that attuned to vibration, if every human was that attuned to vibration, we wouldn't have things like war. We wouldn't have things like murder. We wouldn't even have things like people lying, because you couldn't. And you would, if you felt a strong vibration, if your sensitivities were that in tune, you would go away from it. And you would also know when you're that in tune, you know, like think of your most sensitive moments when you're really sensitive to all the vibrations around you. Even a loud noise can feel almost barbaric, or like an out of tune noise, or just someone being really aggressive. Like when you're in a really high vibrating place and someone walks into the house and they're in a really low vibration and they're angry or upset, you feel that almost violently. So imagine if everyone had that kind of sensitivity. The objective would become, how do we harmonize? How do we communicate in a way that's most harmonic vibrationally? Because that's how the whole world would have harmony. And it would be easy to do because we would naturally flow in a direction that felt more harmonic. We would move away from the things that felt more off key or disharmonic or vibrationally out of alignment, and we'd move towards alignment. It would be so intuitive and so natural to us because we were that tuned in. And what I want to suggest to you is that even calling yourself an empath, even me calling myself an empath, is limiting, because it goes way beyond that. And I know there's a variety of people who are taking this class. Some of you who are just beginning to understand your empathic abilities, and so maybe some of what I'm talking about is just a little too far down the road for you. And some of you have known you're empathic for a while and have already grown out of the tools that many have been teaching, which are like shielding yourself and protecting yourself from negative energy and just kind of keeping other people at a distance. And even I used those tools in the beginning when I first learned that I was an empath and what that even meant. And you research, and that's just pretty much what you find. But as they worked in the beginning. In the very beginning, when I used to imagine a white ball of light around me when I would go out, it helped. And I think it helped because it made me feel like I'm doing something that's helping me. It made me feel, and also you're thinking of the white light around you, so rather than the negative energy coming towards you. But eventually that didn't work anymore, because eventually, again, my sensitivities were too strong for that white bubble, and it was making me feel more and more vulnerable. And I didn't like the idea that my fate was to forever have to protect myself from the world because I just happened to be too vulnerable, or the most vulnerable person on the planet. That just didn't resonate with me. I knew there had to be a deeper reason why I was as sensitive as I was. Just like some people are really good at science, some people are drawn towards math, some people want to be teachers. I think empaths, what I truly believe from a higher level, and it's okay if this doesn't resonate with you, but what I truly think is that those of us who come on into this planet more highly sensitive are literally building a roadmap, so to speak, for more advanced communication. Basically more advanced vibrational communication, and like I said, further down the road, telepathic communication. Now, telepathic communication doesn't actually mean reading someone's thoughts. I think we've had a huge misunderstanding of that, because in science fiction and in a lot of movies, you hear of telepathy as if you are reading what someone is literally thinking. I do know that people have this ability, and I've actually been able to do it a few times in my life, and it's incredibly boring to hear what someone's literal words, like the words and the thoughts that are going on there in their head. It's just the most boring thing. Most people's thoughts are incredibly repetitive and involve things like, oh, I need to walk the dog, sex, food, sex. Oh, I'm irritated about going to work. Oh, this person annoys me. I mean, it's just boring. Vibrational communication is something so different. That's when you're communicating at a soul level, at a kind of imprint level, like I said, the pre-manifested reality, which is the real reality. So if we were all able to sort of pull back from the external and stop believing that the external is the absolute real reality and everything else is kind of not real, and see that the vibrational reality is the most real, in the sense of it's the most relevant. It is what is literally creating the physical reality. If we were to step back into that and then harmonize at that level, we would create a world that was much more harmonic, and we'd be able to hold much more energy in our physical vessels without popping. So what I want to just challenge you with as you go forward from this class is, what does it mean to be a vibrational linguist? How are you communicating around, empathically communicating to the energy around you, not just the people around you, but the room, your house, the nature around you? Start tuning in. As I said, tune in more. Don't tune in less. Don't turn off your sensitivities, because your sensitivities are your superpower. They are what you came here to express. There is a reason for everything, and I refuse to believe that being extra sensitive is somehow a mistake or a weakness. And in fact, not only do I refuse to believe it, but as I begin to express that more and allow myself to become more sensitive and more in alignment with that particular gift or interest of mine or expression or dominant whatever, a dominant vibration, I do feel more empowered, stronger, more in alignment. Manifestation is much easier. And also life becomes much, much more simple, because you go from a state of doing in the external, feeling like it's this rat race of doing things, to a place of being, that you're being energetically, vibrationally, you're being peace, you're being abundant, you're being harmonic. And the external world just naturally changes to reflect that, because you harmonize with the vibrations that you're around. It is powerful stuff. I'm still learning it. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but I will say that I've never found anything that's been more powerful or more useful or had brought more clarity to my life than understanding that I'm a vibrational linguist. And also that we all are. Every single person is empathic to an extent. We just some of us happen to have chosen to express that more dominantly, just like others have chosen to express, like I said, more of a mathematical mind, or more of an ability to be a dancer or whatever. It doesn't mean we're better than anyone else. It's just a specific vibration that we chose for a reason. And I think everyone's reason is different. So think about what your reason is. Think about why you're empathic. Why did you come here? Why did you come here with such an expressed sensitivity, whether you're empathic or just highly sensitive? Why did you choose that? And what does it mean? And how can it be your strength? When you learn to really tune in and be more sensitive, how can that strengthen you? What's strong about that? What's empowering about that? Really interesting things to think about. And actually, in the next class that I'm going to be doing, it's going to be pre-recorded like this one. I'm going to go into much more depth about empathic communication, because so much has been downloaded, especially recently. And I will say, when I was in Sedona a few months ago, I was living there for a while, and all my roommates are empathic. One in particular is incredibly, honestly, she's the most empathic person I've ever been around. And I didn't know her until I moved in this time, because this house that I stayed in, there's sort of roommates. It's kind of a traveling place, so there's people in and out all the time. So she wasn't there the first time I had been in Sedona. She was there the second time, and she and I had such a powerful, I learned more from her than anyone else, and that's when I even first got the concept of empathic communication, because she was so empathic and I was so empathic. When we'd be around each other, it was almost like a tuning fork for the whole environment. So I would feel out of body with her, and we would have those, just like how people describe in out-of-body experiences or in near-death experiences, where you just sort of naturally know what the other one's thinking. We did speak in words, but a lot of times we didn't even need to. We would just be feeling each other. She would be in her room, I'd be in my room, and we would just feel each other. We just naturally migrate into the kitchen and talk because we heard each other. I can't even explain how powerful it was, and that's when I first started to understand what it means to really tune into that vibration. So my next class, which is going to be empathic magic or empathic communication, haven't decided on the language yet or the wording, but I'm going to be going into a lot more detail on how to empathically communicate with the world around you. So stay tuned.